Hello, and welcome to another in the TCPalm Editorial Board's series of interviews with candidates who are on the November ballot. I'm Blake Fontenay, a columnist for TCPalm, and I'm joined by three members of our editorial board, fellow columnists Larry Reisman and Ed Killer, and Adam Neal, our executive editor. In this session, we'll be talking to candidates for the District 85 seat in the House of Representatives. We have with us Toby Overdorf, the incumbent, and the challenger, Curtis Tucker. We thank you both for being with us, and we will conduct a session that will last approximately 45 minutes. We hope that this video will be useful for voters in making their decisions, and our editorial board will also consider making a recommendation in this race following this meeting. So if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and get started. I will lead off the questioning, and at some point I will turn it over to the other editorial board members so they can weigh in as well. So without further ado, let me start with the question for, we'll start with Mr. Overdorf. If you could, please describe one ethical situation you've faced during your life and how you dealt with it.
Well, being in the environmental consulting world and being in the world of development, you can imagine there's a variety of issues that are associated with that, and also then heading into politics and combining those two disciplines has at times been a challenge. That being said, I've had in my past a client that may have come to me and said, I want to do X, Y, or Z. And I said, all right, well, here's the permitting side of that. Here's how we can handle that. And then that's the last I heard of that person. I then went by the site approximately 2 months later, and the site was basically cleared, had done without permits, et cetera. At that point in time, I realized it was really an ethical obligation of mine to go ahead and talk to the regulatory people, to talk to the local folks about it. And we did go ahead and file enforcement on that. And that was an area that we really, it was a challenge in that obviously there was a side to the client confidentiality, but the reality was that this was a moral, ethical, and law line that was crossed, and I could not stand for it. And so we dealt with it by dealing directly with the authorities.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Mr. Tucker, same question for you. Could you please describe one ethical dilemma you've faced in your life and how you resolved it?
I'm trying to think of an ethical dilemma that I faced. And I'm really drawing a blank. Ethical dilemma of, I'm sorry, maybe I'll think of something later, but I don't have an ethical dilemma that pops right into my mind.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to the next question. And if you want to deal with that, we'll leave some time at the end for each of you to make closing remarks. So if something comes to mind, that's fine. But let me start with you on this next question. If you could describe your top 3 legislative priorities if you're elected.
Oh, if I'm elected, my top 3. The first one I mentioned in the profile, or the background that I submitted to you. The decision to eliminate the right of women to control their own healthcare choices overturned more than 50 years of established privacy rights. I would support the immediate issuance of an executive order restoring the right, and absent that action, oppose any efforts to further restrict their reproductive rights. Secondly, the whole situation with FPL and dark money and ghost candidates is really deeply troubling to me. And I think campaign finance reform, where you require transparency and respect to all political contributions and expenditures. I think this is really needed to bring sunshine to rid the state of dark money that infects our state politics. So that would be another issue. Thirdly, the state is facing an affordable housing crisis. It's been years in the building, and I think I would focus my attention on that. The first part of the first thing I'd recommend doing in affordable housing is to fully fund the Sadowski Trust Fund, repeal the law that cut it in half, and eliminate sweeps. The Sadowski Trust Fund has lost about $2 billion over the past, I think, 20 years since sweeps started. 94,000 affordable housing units have not been built. And I think that's the first step in trying to address the affordable housing crisis. So, number one, restoring the right of women to control their own reproductive rights. Number two, campaign finance law to bring light to make sure everybody knows who's giving what to whom. And thirdly, affordable housing on the Sadowski Trust Fund.
Thank you. Mr. Overdorf, same question. If you're reelected, what would be your top 3 legislative priorities?
Well, thank you very much for the question. And again, I wanted to say thank you also for the opportunity to be here today. I didn't say that in my first statement. And it's honestly is a pleasure to be here and talk to the voters. All that being said, the 3 priorities that I'd like to continue to work on. Number one is the initiatives of human trafficking. This includes both labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking. As we've seen with additional people coming across the border illegally, with our country being flooded, it is an opportunity now to deal with this problem in both, labor as well as sex trafficking. These are areas that are affecting all Florida right now. And I've been proud to have legislation pass each year that I've been in the legislature, specifically dealing with this. The second would be continued work on the environment. This is an area that is so important to our region, as you all are very well aware. And I'm proud of some of the legislation that we've done in the past, dealing with BMPs, dealing with enhanced water quality areas, and dealing with a variety of regulations, including the first ban ever of shark finning in the state of Florida. And this has been some work that's done across the aisle, so that I'm working with both Republican and Democrat partners, and most of this legislation has passed unanimously. The final part would be to continue to work on our education system. 2 years ago, we were able to pass my bill actually was the funding mechanism that allowed for the increase in starting teacher pay. And we will continue to work towards increasing educational pay, increasing educational opportunities, and increasing the opportunity for choice across our entire state. Florida is leading the way across our country and has become a model for school choice. And of course, we'll continue to do that. Finally, I would say that we're well at work on Mr. Tucker's top 3 priorities there already, and that last year we passed Senate Bill 2512, which requires full funding for Sadowski, and we have funded that 100% the last 2 years, and so that's been a great thing, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me start with you on the next question. Since you mentioned environmental work as a priority, talk a little bit about what role you see the state playing in managing the water quality in Lake Okeechobee, and any changes that you see that might be needed there.
Oh, absolutely. One of the bills that I worked on last year that unfortunately did not get to the finish line was mechanical removal of vegetation. what we see when you do spray vegetation spraying vegetation within the lake, it actually releases the vegetative matter as well as the phosphorus and nitrogen right back into the system. By harvesting it and taking it out of the system, possibly reutilizing that material, and there are demonstration projects right now on that, it actually takes the phosphorus and nitrogen out of there. Obviously, this is an incredibly complex situation. We have to be looking at additional, not only BMPs, but water quality management north of the lake, which is exactly what we're doing. When you look at Alico, you look at other projects that are up there, they're holding water back north of the lake. And I think that is one of the keys to this. The second is to potentially take advantage of the situation we have right now with a low lake system. I know several years ago when we had a drought, we were able to get in there and not only do some muck burning, but also do some muck removal. And with that comes direct phosphorus and nitrogen removal. We need to continue to work towards the actual TMDL projects and the basin management action plans. I filed a bill in my very first term that dealt with BMPs and specifically dealt with BMAPs as well. That did not see its way to the finish line. However, portions of that ended up in Senate Bill 712, which did, in fact, have requirements for monitoring, requirements for reporting, was a landmark bill, but we aren't done. We have to do more to ensure water quality for the future, ensure water quality for what's happening within our region now, and to ensure that we have limited and or no releases going in the future. It's been a pleasure to be able to comment and work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the South Florida Water Management District, and then to educate my peers as well in forming the very first ever South Florida Water Management District caucus. I've been able to bring together literally one half of the House and one half of the Senate to go ahead and really be educated and to learn about these issues. If I am one of 120, and if I don't get a group of people on my side and working towards legislation that will solve this issue, I will get nowhere. And so by educating my fellow lawmakers, by educating on both sides of the aisle, we are going to be able to solve this problem. It's not something that started overnight, and it's not something that will be solved overnight, but we have made significant progress every single year. And with a governor like Ron DeSantis, who has made sure that we get $2.5 billion back towards Everglades restoration, I'm confident that we are going to get to that solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me, before I move to Mr. Tucker, ask you just one related follow-up question. You mentioned the possibility of making mandatory the pollution monitoring requirements. What is your position about possibly making the best management practices that farmers are asked to follow to reduce their runoff, making those mandatory? Do you have a position on that?
Absolutely. I already voted on it in Senate Bill 712. Its BMPs are mandatory. They are required to be on every piece of property, not just the large pieces, but also the small pieces. FDACS is overwhelmed with the enforcement associated with that. They're required to inspect every single 2 years on that. And if a landowner does not adhere to the requirements of a BMP or voluntarily enrolling in the BMP program, then they are reported to FDEP, and FDEP is required then to enforce that. Right now, it's an issue of manpower, and we have to get additional manpower both to FDACS as well as to the FDEP in order to continue the enforcement on this. However, there have been multiple enforcement letters that were issued this past year and the year before after the passage of Senate Bill 712. The BMPs alone are not going to do the overall project and the overall end of this. And that's why I was proud to work on the environmental management bill last year, which is House Bill 965, which now requires water quality enhancement areas and will actually be able to privately clean up water while throughout the basins. And this is actually the solution before additional enforcement is put into place. So now we have the ability to solve the issue. And now this year we need to make sure that those TMDLs are followed through and the BMAPs are actually enforced.
Thank you. Mr. Tucker, I know we spent a good bit of time on that question, but what are your thoughts about the state's role in dealing with water pollution on Lake O?
I'm relying on the expertise and knowledge of former Governor Chris to give me some guidance here. And Florida's liquid heart has been polluted for decades. Tons of legacy pollution, along with flood control efforts and the lake's natural geography, have vexed efforts to fully restore Lake Okeechobee, but can at least stop making the problem worse. We'll crack down. Former Governor Chris says he will crack down on agricultural runoff, improve management of the watershed north of the lake, and limit back pumping. Communities around the lake and coastal communities on the St. Lucie and Collahatchie rivers have been the ones paying the price for Lake Okeechobee polluters for too long. So I would subscribe to those thoughts.
Okay, thank you. And let me start with you on the next question. Talk to me about how you view the relationship between state government and the cities and counties around the state. Do you feel that there are areas in which this relationship could be improved?
I think it's very important that the state be respectful of the unique situations and interests of every community. I know that in the area of affordable housing, a lot of the solutions to the problems are going to be determined by the local governments. And I think it's very important that that be respected and be honored. Also, in environmental matters, the state has to allow localities to do what they feel is best. An example of that would be how Key West had decided to ban discharges of cruise ships in the area of Key West, which threatened the coral reefs. Unfortunately, that proposal was permission to do that for Key West was denied in legislation that was enacted last session. Fortunately, this year, in response to that, there's been a study by, hold on, I want to get the right name. The NOAA has recommended an expansion. They've done a whole series of recommendations for how to handle that area. And they are recommending that the channel be expanded and the ban on cruise ship discharges would take place. So, I think it's very important to have local governments making decisions that affect their localities.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Overdorf, the same question. How do you view the state government's relationship with the cities and counties? And are there areas where you think that relationship could be improved?
I think it's an opportunity for improvement every time. Right now we actually have a unique opportunity here on the Treasure Coast, and specifically in District 85. Councilwoman, Vice Mayor, actually, Jolene Carballo was just named the president of the Florida League of Cities, and so I've been able to work with her over the last couple of years as she's gone ahead to that position, and working directly with the city of Port St. Lucie, the city of Stuart, and allowing for and understanding their positions on recent legislation. And the reality is that in Martin and St. Lucie County, you have folks that really understand how to govern their people. They're great leaders, and they've done, in my opinion, done a great job. But we also have some players across our state that unfortunately do not necessarily have the best interest of all their citizens in mind. One of those recently came across over on the West Coast, where there was almost a 750% raise in impact fees. This 750% raise really caught the attention of the legislature, and as a result, we did put a cap that basically allows for local government to, in fact, increase the impact fees, but not by 750%. We actually had a 25% impact fee raise that was a cap on that, and recognizing that in fact costs go up, and as a result we do need to increase that. So I think there's a balance that has to happen, and that happens between communication, between continuing to work with those local elected officials and to understand the issues within your district, and then compare that across the state as well. You know, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, which I served on for several years, is also a fantastic resource because they're actually able to go back and forth across various municipalities and bring the issues forward. They've been to Tallahassee. We've talked on multiple occasions on how pending legislation would or would not impact various municipalities. So to work with them has also been an honor, and I look forward to continuing to coordinate back and forth between the local governments, the regional governments, and bringing it then forward to the state legislature.
Okay, thank you. And another relationship question for you, Mr. Overdorf.
Certainly.
If you could talk about the legislature's relationship with Governor DeSantis, how would you characterize it? And are there changes that, in your view, need to be made?
It has been an absolute pleasure to work with Governor DeSantis and his team. I am on regular conversations with his office, with the members of his office. I think he's done a great job in leading the state. We brought forward various treatment centers as we were going through the COVID issues over the last several years. We have opened up our businesses again. He has been a leader with school choice, is also with parental rights. I think working with Governor DeSantis has been an absolute pleasure. I look forward to continuing that, and we will see as we go through these elections. I think that he's going to get right back into office, and I look forward to working with him there. And I really hope that we were able to work even closer.
Thank you. Mr. Tucker, same question. What do you think of the legislature's relationship to the governor, and are there changes that need to be made?
I come from New York, where there was a strong legislative body, and they would speak up and oftentimes disagree with the governor. My observation about the relationship between this governor and this legislature is the legislature follows the governor's lead almost exclusively. Now, they may be all in agreement on the same principle, but there doesn't seem like there's a lot of dissent to me. And sometimes I'm surprised that there was one situation that really surprised me. It involved the budget that the governor approved, and at the last minute, the Tampa Bay Rays issued a kind of a modest statement in support of reasonable gun laws, and the governor vetoed a $36 million proposal that was in the budget, and I believe it was at the request of an important state senator. It was not at his request. It involved his district, and I just thought that I don't think that could happen in New York with a strong legislature and the governor ability to just unilaterally veto something like that. So I just one of the reasons why I want to be a representative of the District 85 is to add a different voice to the whole debate about the best course of action for the state. And I'm not sure that the current representative provides that voice.
Okay, thank you.
Blake, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Thanks. Mr. Tucker, are there, can you just very quickly, without any really explanation, but can you name 3 things you agree with the governor on?
I'm trying to think. No.
Thank you. Representative Overdorf, can you name 3 things that you disagree with the governor on?
I got to tell you, the governor and I are on the same page for the most part across the board. I think that there's some subtle nuances of environmental regulation where I would see it one way and then he would see it another. And I think there's some subtle nuances within transportation issues as well. And that's an area that we'll be getting into that, I may see it one way and he may see it another, but overall, I would say that between budget, parental rights, and environment, I mean those cover a lot of the areas that I cover, and so I'm pretty pleased with what the governor's been doing.
Thank you.
All right, Larry, do you have any follow-ups for now, or do you want me to pick it back up again?
I do have a couple of other quick questions. Representative Overdorf, you talk about human trafficking. How effective has your legislation been? In other words, how many prosecutions have there been in the state, over the past couple of years in terms of human trafficking?
Well, thank you for the question. In dealing with human trafficking, I'm not sure if you're talking specifically about labor trafficking or if you're talking about sex trafficking. But around the Super Bowl, that we had actually 2 of them during my term, we had multiple arrests. I believe there were 100 arrests in Jacksonville, and then over 100 arrests as well over in Tampa. The Attorney General Moody actually went ahead, and she would have a much more statistics on that. I'm sorry that I don't have those exact statistics today associated with it, but that was specifically for sex trafficking. On the labor trafficking side, as you may or may not be aware, this is an area that we actually improved the legislation on this last 2 years. And this is also an area that we are going to be working on additionally. I do not have the exact specifics as to what was the arrest record associated with those. However, I do know that what has happened over the last 4 years is, number one, we have now allowed for training to go across the board within hotels, restaurateurs, spas, even with this past year with fire inspectors. So the prevalence of the arrests are up. I do not have the conviction rates for you, Mr. Eastman, but I'd be happy to follow up and get that information to you with no doubt. There's additional work that absolutely has to be done here.
Thank you. And I just have one question for Mr. Tucker. Can you tell me how it came to be that you ran for this seat?
As a cashier at Publix, I meet a lot of people, and one of the people I met was E.J. Bernier, who I believe ran for this seat before, and he came through my cashier's line several years ago, and he had on a T-shirt that said EJ, and I said, "Oh, you campaigning for him?" And he said, "No, I am him." So we developed a kind of friendship, and as a cashier, people don't know my background. I have over 30 years of experience in New York State government and the legislature. Work for the Ways and Means Committee. I'm for the State Housing Agency. I've been an advocate, so I really have a pretty strong background in government. And at times, I feel like when I came to Florida, I really kind of retired from that. But I thought I may have a little more to contribute, and I decided to. I said to EJ, "Would you like to look at my resume someday?" And he said, "Oh, sure." And so I sent him my resume, and I got the reaction that I thought I might get. And he said to me, "You ever thought about running for office?" And I said, "Actually, yeah, I think I have." And that led to a meeting with the woman Fallon Laughley, who's the head of the Democratic Committee in St. Lucie County. And there was an opening, in the 85th district that had no one else running. And it seemed like a wonderful opportunity to me to maybe contribute something more to Florida and the voters in the 85th district. So that's how it all transpired. And, I'm really excited about this opportunity. It's something new for me. As I said, I've been doing this for over 30 years, but never as a candidate. And that's a new challenge. And I hope I'm up to it.
Thank you. Back to you, Blake.
Okay. Actually, this is a good point to ask Adam or Ed if they have any questions. I have a few more in the time we have, but I want to give you all an opportunity to jump in if you'd like.
Go ahead, Blake.
Adam? Okay. All right. Well, let's start with Mr. Tucker on the next question. A few minutes ago, your opponent alluded to school curriculums, I think, and I just wanted to get your view on what the legislature has done recently in the way of regulating school curriculums, and if you think there are more efforts that need to be done in that area.
I think I'm troubled by how curriculum and schools have become so politicized. It's just something that is a concern of mine because parental rights are very important. It's just there are different views about different things from parents, and one set of values seems to have taken control. And I think some of the restrictions that are being placed on teachers are not healthy for learning about different parts of living. And the school board's elections are nonpartisan, but suddenly they've become very partisan. And I know I have a daughter who's a teacher, and I think it would be very difficult for her to decide exactly how to proceed, not knowing exactly what's accepted and what's not accepted, and shying away from there. I think some of the restrictions are not necessary. The critical race theory is really not taught, and gender issues they're real, and I think ignoring them is not right. I recently visited my other daughter in Philadelphia, and I had some time, and I went down to Independence Hall and at the mall there, and there was this whole series of stories about slavery, and it was very interesting. One of the stories was about a slave who would work for the president, and those are, I think, important parts of our history, and ignoring them or pretending they don't exist is very unfortunate. There have been wonderful things about this country, and there's been some things that are needed to be corrected. And we're making progress on all issues, but I don't think whitewashing them is healthy.
Thank you. Mr. Overdorf, same question for you.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Blake. First of all, I think that we've actually been able to expand some of the educational opportunities within the state of Florida. And those include curriculum, specifically the first of its kind on financial literacy. And I think that is a critical item that we have to have within our school system. to allow for our graduates to actually be prepared. It's amazing how many don't know what a credit report is, or the implications of, in fact, having a credit card and not understanding how that may affect you in the future. So having that into our school systems now, I think is a great win. We also required the education component of the Ocoee massacre. If you don't know what that is, and I don't have time to get into that, but this is a requirement that's now part of our all of our schools that need to learn about this disgusting part of Florida history. One thing I would agree with my opponent is we cannot whitewash our history. We need to be teaching all of our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. If we don't teach it, then we are doomed to repeat it. So I absolutely agree that we need to continue to teach the history, all the history associated with the U.S. And our frankly our founding. Additionally, we've been able to expand the opportunities and now become a national model for school choice, and I think that is a great opportunity that we have. I do believe specifically in parental rights, and I sat with some of the parents that were affected. Although in Martin or St. Lucie County, we may not have a lot of these influences, I sat with two of the mothers that were directly influenced by some of the behavior in their school system, and it was shocking. And to have to regulate that is unconscionable. But we did, and therefore we really chose to put parents first, and again, parental rights. And finally, when looking at bright futures and the opportunities now, where a child may not have the opportunity this last year, we recognize they may not have the opportunity to volunteer all the time in order to qualify for their Bright Future Scholarship, but instead we recognize the work component associated with it. And now if a child is working, which, when I was in high school, that's what I did. I didn't have the time for volunteering. I was working. That now is recognized as one of the options that you can have to qualify for the Bright Future. So I think that as far as the school curriculum, we are on our way. Again, we need to continue to increase teacher pay, and we need to continue to increase what we spend on a per pupil basis. But I think that we are on our way.
Thank you. Before we move on from that, I would like to get your thoughts specifically on critical race theory, and Mr. Tucker had alluded to gender issues. Let's also broaden that to include the recently passed "Don't Say Gay" bill, as it's called. Could you talk a little bit about your thoughts on those issues?
Well, if anybody actually reads the bill, the word "gay" never appears in the bill. So I believe that's a misnomer, first of all. But overall, to say that it is proper to teach a kindergartner about sex, I highly disagree with that. I do not believe that we should be talking about sex, the act, whether it's in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Those are areas that, frankly, I don't know why we actually have to legislate this, but there are concrete examples across our state where this has come into play. And as a result, we have to have legislature that goes ahead and deals with this issue. Now, responsible and appropriate sex education is something that needs to come into play as you go forward. But I also believe that the parents should know about that, and that's part of the Parental Rights Act. You should know if there are conversations about a school may be having with a child that says that we think that you're a girl and you're not a boy. Those are conversations that I had with a mother that directly goes ahead and works specifically against this dialogue that we don't have it. I mean, I saw the concrete examples associated with it. So all that being said, I think that there are requirements for that legislation as we go forward. As far as finally as critical race theory, again, specific examples were shown, and I actually saw that as we move forward, again, not within Martin or St. Lucie County. However, I generally and specifically do research when I'm moving ahead and looking at legislation, and I asked those questions. The evidence was presented to me, and we realized that we needed to do something about it. So I'm proud of the legislation that's been brought forward, and I'm proud of the legislation that has been put into law. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question. We're getting near the end of our time, and I do want to give you an opportunity to make closing statements. However, I would like to ask one more specific question, starting with Mr. Overdorf. We have written a few pieces about the state's Black Business Loan Program, and I would like to get your thoughts on the status of that program, how effective you think it's been, and whether or not you believe any changes need to be made.
Well, thank you. I actually read your column or columns on that, and went ahead and talked to the folks up north. And frankly, I think that this is a program that needs either A, additional administration, or B, an overhaul. And frankly, it's an area that, as a person who likes to serve his constituents, this is an area that I'd like to see an opportunity for either A, expansion, or at least B, better regulated, so that we can actually have these opportunities out there for these businesses. As a member of the local NAACP, this is I've come across several folks that could utilize these funds and could in fact have that opportunity. But without that regulation in place and without those funds in place from those folks, we are not going to have success. So I really appreciate you digging into that, and certainly is an area that, if elected, I'd be happy to get back to work on and see if we can't reform that situation.
Thank you. And Mr. Tucker, the same question for you. What are your thoughts about the Black Business Loan Program and any reforms you might see as necessary to that?
I'm not familiar with that program and have to research and tell you my thoughts. But
Okay.
I didn't see your article, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar, so I'm not really prepared to offer any opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, we are closing in on our time limit here, so we would like to hear closing statements from each of you, and this is your opportunity to share with us anything we haven't covered so far, anything you would like to convey to voters prior to the election. So, Mr. Tucker, if you could go first and let us know your thoughts.
Sure. I really appreciated this interview. The questions that were asked were very probing and made me think that we didn't cover a number of areas that I'm concerned with because I as an Uber and Lyft driver, I get to see people's struggles as they struggle to pay for groceries, as they struggle to pay rent and housing and home ownership insurance. And my focus as a candidate is to address and provide real solutions to people's struggles. Affordable housing is one. I have a whole series of ideas for what needs to be done to end the affordable housing crisis. The home ownership insurance crisis is just years in the making, and I don't see any evidence that that's being addressed. I have some other issues in the environment that we didn't talk about. The need for solar power and that kind of thing. There's the sugar industry and how one of the issues about them is recently had a report recently about how the pollution from sugar burning affects people in Belglade, and I think that has to be addressed, along with the idea that there was a provision in the Right to Farm Act that limits sugar growers' liability for the effects on fine particle pollution. And I think that's wrong. I don't think there should be limits on the liability if you are putting things that end up dramatically hurting individuals. And the study proved that your paper reprinted from the Palm Beach Post article showed that people are dying every year because of those particles. Healthcare. I think that we need to expand Medicaid. If we expanded Medicaid, over a million and a third residents would be covered. 400,000 Florida residents who have no realistic access to health insurance without Medicaid expansion, they'd be covered. We also did an analysis that expanding Medicaid would provide coverage to over 10,000 uninsured people in District 85. So I think Florida is one of 12 states who hasn't expanded Medicaid, and they have to do that. I have, those are the kinds of issues that I think I want to work on, and I think they're most important to the people who are need assistance in getting through life. So those are some of the things that I would have brought up if asked. So that's my closing statement.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Mr. Overdorf, closing statement from you, please.
Well, first of all, again, thank you for the opportunity to be able to be here today and to speak with not only you, but also to finally meet my opponent. And I wish him well as we go through this process. Additionally, I just wanted to say thank you to your readers and your viewers out there for taking the time and the opportunity to be able to watch this and to really learn the differences between myself and my opponent. That being said, I am really going to be focused this next couple of years here, if I am elected, to be working on infrastructure. And what I mean by that is, over the last several years, we have had hodgepodge proposals for septic to sewer conversions, as well as various stormwater issues and things like that. The septic to sewer conversions and stormwater, as well as other municipal infrastructure, in my opinion, really should be put together into a program that could then be planned out, much like we have DOT planning. That is an area that I'd like to work on, where we have a 5-year plan, we have a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan that's laid out over time. There's an actual work program with it. That way you're not having this hodgepodge of, hey, I got 1.5 million for septic to sewer conversion in Southwest Port St. Lucie. This way we would actually have a plan, have things laid out so that you could replace a aging sewer plant. You could replace and do a new water plant. That's an area that I'm really going to be working on. The other areas, again, will be continuing to work in the areas of human trafficking, both labor and sex trafficking. Would also like to expand skills training. We were just established the skills high school out in Indiantown. Some great work with the representative to my south and north and doing that, and expanding the opportunities that we have at Indian River State College so that we can, again, expand the training facility there and get people to work. Everybody deserves a great job, but not everybody has to go and do a 4-year degree. And that's something that I ran on the very first time, and it's something that I've worked on the entire time that I've been in the legislature. I hope to get back there to have that opportunity to do that. And of course, the other issue that I'll be working with my associates on is homeowner insurance. This has gotten out of control. Recently my mother, even her insurance was canceled, and we scrambled for about 3 weeks to try and find her an additional policy. And it was extremely hard. We were finally able to get her onto a policy after multiple changes and things along those lines. But I got to tell you, it was eye-opening for me, and it's eye-opening with every person that comes into our office and talks about this. Recently, I had 5 different folks come into the office on various issues, except that 4 of those issues related to homeowner insurance. And this is something that we really need to be tackling over the next year and working towards. So I'll look forward to those opportunities to be able to work for the residents, for the region here. I most look forward to the opportunities for service and the opportunities to be able to be that person who is good on constituent services, whether it's unemployment or traveling back to Florida. Those have been some of the most rewarding experiences that we've had thus far. So to have that opportunity to, again, be moving forward for the residents of District 85, to continue to be endorsed by firefighters, policemen, realtors, builders, environmental groups, et cetera. This has been just absolutely fantastic. And I look forward to, again, representing those folks. If anybody has additional issues that they want to learn about with me, just go to tobyoverdorf.com, and we have our page there and a variety of issues there. I look forward to working for the folks in District 85. And again, thank you for the opportunity today.
Well, thank you to both candidates, and to those of you who may be viewing this video. We hope it's been informative, and we encourage you to look for additional interviews like this on tcpalm.com. And please don't forget to vote.